Did you know that Iran and Israel were once close allies? In fact, Israel was Iran's first ally after it was created in 1948. This was mainly because Mohammad Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, saw Israel as a bulwark against the Soviet Union and communism in general. But all of this would change rather quickly when the Iranians overthrew the Shah in 1979 and replaced him with an Islamic Republic ruled by an absolute monarch. The leader of this revolution was the charismatic cleric Ayatollah Khomeini, who upon returning to Iran from exile in Iraq, would proclaim that there is no place for Zionism in Islam, and that all Muslims have a duty to fight against the Zionist entity until its demise. This effectively ended the alliance between Israel and Iran. But why did these two seemingly very different nations become such bitter enemies? Well, let's find out. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be looking at the history of Iran and Israel to see how they went from allies to sworn enemies. We will be discussing how Israel occupied Iranian-backed territories, how the United States played a role in all of this, the infamous Iranian hostage crisis, Iran's nuclear program, and much more. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. Before the Islamic Revolution, Iran had been ruled by the Pahlavi dynasty since 1925. The last Shah, Mohammad Pahlavi, came to power in 1941 after his father was forced to abdicate due to health reasons. Under his rule, Iran underwent a period of modernization and secularization known as the White Revolution. The Shah's pro-Western policies and his efforts to improve relations with Israel caused resentment among many Iranians who saw him as a puppet of the United States and Britain.
Ow.
In addition, the Iranian intellectuals were deeply influenced by European thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and were not happy with the Shah's authoritarian regime. All this culminated into a nationwide revolt in 1978 that led to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. In February of that year, demonstrations against the Shah turned violent, and he was forced to flee the country. A month later, the leader of the revolution, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, returned from his exile in Iraq and established an Islamic Republic. Khomeini's ideology was a blend of Shia, Islam, and Marxism, which he called Islamic socialism or Islamic communism. He proclaimed that the Zionist entity had no right to exist and that the duty of all Muslims was to destroy it. As soon as the new government was formed, it severed ties with Israel and the embassy was seized, holding several diplomats hostage. After the Islamic Revolution, Iran became a radical Shiite Islamic state, ruled by clerics instead of an absolute monarch. The new government overthrew the previous regime and established a new constitution based on Islamic law. The country was renamed from Iran to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the old flag was replaced with a new one featuring the Shahada, the Islamic Declaration of Faith. The new government also began to promote Islamic values and customs throughout the country. The clergy took control of schools and universities and began to teach Islamic doctrine to the next generation. They also began to promote traditional Islamic values and customs, such as fasting during Ramadan, praying 5 times a day and wearing religious clothing like the hijab. The Iranian hostage crisis of 1979 was a major turning point in the relationship between Iran and the United States. It began when a group of Iranian students seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. The incident occurred during the final days of the Carter administration, and it significantly damaged relations between the two countries. The hostage crisis began in response to the U.S. government's decision to allow the ailing Shah to enter the United States for cancer treatment. Many Iranians saw this as an insult and a sign of American arrogance, and they protested outside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. On November 4, 1979, a group of Iranian students stormed the embassy and took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. They demanded the return of the Shah to Iran to face trial for his crimes. The United States government refused this demand and instead provided medical care for the Shah in New York. The hostages were held for 444 days until January 20, 1981, when they were finally released. The hostage crisis had a significant impact on both countries. It contributed to the end of the Carter administration and helped to usher in the era of conservative politics in the United States. In Iran, the crisis was seen as a victory for the Islamic Revolution, and it helped to solidify the position of the clergy in Iranian society. Now let's talk about how the rivalry between Iran and Israel escalated. After the Islamic Revolution, Iran began to support various groups and individuals who opposed the Zionist entity. For example, in Lebanon, Iran supported the establishment of Hezbollah, a Shia Islamist political party and militant group that opposes Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory. Iran also supported Hamas, a Palestinian Sunni Islamist organization that uses violence to resist the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory. In addition, Iran has provided military and financial aid to various Palestinian militant groups, including those in Gaza and the West Bank. The Iran-Israel rivalry has also been exacerbated by the conflict over the former Iranian province of Kurdistan. The region is located in the northwest of Iran and has a large Kurdish population. In the early 20th century, the region was part of the Ottoman Empire. But after the empire's collapse in World War I, it was divided between Iran, Turkey, and the British Empire. Since then, Iran has sought to regain control of Kurdistan, which it sees as an integral part of its territory. However, Turkey has also laid claim to the region, which has led to tensions between the two countries. The rivalry has been further complicated by the presence of Kurdish militant groups in the region, such as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which has launched attacks against both Iran and Turkey. This has led to joint military operations between the two countries in an attempt to suppress the Kurdish insurgency. Another reason for the rivalry is the control over water resources. Iran and Turkey are both located in a dry and arid region, and water scarcity is a major issue for both countries. The two countries share several important water sources, such as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, as well as underground aquifers. Iran has long been dependent on Turkey for water from the upper reaches of these rivers. However, in recent years, Turkey has begun to impose restrictions on Iranian access to these water sources, which has led to tensions between the two countries. Furthermore, the two countries have different political systems and ideologies. Iran is an Islamic republic ruled by clerics, while Turkey is a secular state with a president as its head of state. This ideological divide has also contributed to the rivalry between the two countries. The rivalry between Iran and Israel has also been exacerbated by the nuclear issue. In 2006, the UN Security Council passed a resolution demanding that Iran suspend its uranium enrichment program. Iran refused, however, and continued to enrich uranium, which it claimed was for peaceful purposes. The United States and its allies suspected that Iran was using the program to develop nuclear weapons, and this led to increasing tensions between Iran and Israel. Israel has threatened military action against Iran's nuclear facilities if diplomacy fails to stop Iran's nuclear program. This has raised fears in Iran that Israel may launch a preemptive strike against its nuclear facilities, which could lead to a wider conflict in the region. In recent years, the rivalry between Iran and Israel has spilled over into Syria, where both countries have clashed without officially going to war. The conflict began in 2011, when the Syrian government launched a brutal crackdown on anti-government protesters. Iran and Russia supported the Syrian government, while the United States and its allies supported the rebels. This led to a proxy war between Iran and Israel in Syria. Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes against Iranian and Hezbollah targets in Syria in an attempt to push them back from the Golan Heights. The Iranian government views the Israeli presence in Syria as a threat to its interests in the region and has vowed to expel the Israelis from the country. In addition to the conflict in Syria, Iran and Israel have also clashed in cyberspace. In 2012, Israel was hit by a cyber attack that caused widespread disruption to its banking and media websites. Iran was blamed for the attack, which was seen as retaliation for Israeli cyber attacks against Iranian targets. The two countries have also clashed through their respective media outlets, with Iranian state TV frequently broadcasting anti-Israel propaganda and Israeli media outlets accusing Iran of supporting terrorism and extremism. Despite the rivalry, there have been some efforts to normalize relations between Iran and Israel. In 2018, the two countries held indirect talks in Switzerland aimed at easing tensions and improving relations. However, these talks broke down and relations between the two countries have since deteriorated. So to conclude, Iran and Israel went from being allies to bitter enemies due to a variety of factors. The Islamic Revolution in Iran led to a new government that was hostile towards Israel. The rivalry was further complicated by the conflict over the former Iranian province of Kurdistan and water resources. Additionally, Iran's nuclear program and support for militant groups in the region have increased tensions with Israel. Despite some efforts to normalize relations, the two countries remain bitter enemies and continue to clash in Syria and through other means. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.